Hi, everybody. Welcome to First Corinthians and Second Corinthians. I'll probably replay this for Second Corinthians. I haven't been on Zoom for a while, so hang with me. You'll notice that you'll need to update if you haven't been on since we had class last time. If you're new to precept upon precept, I have an introduction video that you should watch so that you know what we're talking about, some of the lingo that we use, and how to do your homework and what inductive Bible study means. This will be my last two classes that I do as far as precept upon precept. God hasn't told me anything new. I have a lot of stuff going on, and I'm going to turn 70 next year. So it's time for me to start looking at other things. I'm serving a lot more in the church, so there's more going on. But for those who haven't seen me before, hello, hi. We'll have a meeting just real quick before the first lesson, which is April 4th, just to get to know each other or to catch up with each other. Most of the people in my classroom has been with me for years. So welcome back, everybody. Hi, Oli. I did get your email, and I'm so glad to see all of you next week. So we are going to share something. I tell you what, we're going to share. There we go. Oh, they've changed things. Okay. That's why I like to do the introduction because you sit there and go, oh, they changed things again, right? So let me see here. There we got it. So this is the introduction to Cornith. Cornith was a city that Paul went to in his second and third missionary trips. There was, well, we'll get to a lot of the different stuff. If you look at the current Cornith excavations, this is Cornith excavated. It's in this view, the ancient city center looking at the Acron Cornith with a B telephone lens, big telephone lens. On the left is standing columns of the Temple of Apollo. That's right there. On the right side of the Lacaean Road, which we'll get into what that is later, can be seen in between the two and slightly down is the ancient Agora. That's the marketplace. This is the temple of Apollo down here. Um, it was a big place of worship. It was dominated. You could see it from everywhere from the city. So it had 38 columns and it was just huge. But this city was destroyed in 146 BC by Roman consul Muminus. Y'all, by the way, you know how I am about these words. It was laid to ruin for 100 years. Can you imagine that? Um, he took an army there to quell a rebellion against the Roman Empire. Muminum executed the men and made slaves of the women and children to be utilized in other parts of the empire, and burned all the top and toppled all the buildings. It lay to ruins for 100 years, but was rebuilt in 44 BC by Julius Caesar. When he rebuilt the city, it became a major city in that part of the world. Its capital of the province was Achaia, the southern half of Greece. Caesar populated the city with former slaves, freedmen, homeless Greek sailors ready to retire from sea, and various other persons from many different nations. It quickly became a city of commerce. Sailors, while their goods were being transported, would go to the city of Corinth to buy wares in the agora, which is, again, the marketplace. This is what Paul encountered in his 18-month stay in AD 50. You can read that in Acts 18:11. The characteristics, if you don't know anything about the characteristics, these are special kinds of people. If you look around today, you'll say, we're looking a lot like Cornith. But there was religious pluralism and rival cults, variety of personal lifestyles, standards, that's supposed to be standards of sexual activity. There was a confusion about that. A serious breakdown in family relationships. There was drug abuse, especially the abuse of alcohol. There was a fascination with bizarre forms of behaviors. There was a widening gap between the rich and the poor, and there was a push towards the liberation of women for traditional roles. Paul's epistles, some of Paul's comments are hard to understand, okay? And those who are ignorant and unstable have twisted his letters around to mean something quite different from what he meant, just as they do in other parts of Scripture, and the result is a disaster for them. That's in 2 Peter 3:16. Even Peter says, some of his stuff is hard to understand, but what he's saying is solid. The epistles of, that's epistles. Oh boy, I really spelled that wrong. Paul developed the doctrine of the church. In his letters to the 7 churches, that'll be in Rome, Cornith, Galatia, Ephesus, Philippi, Colossae, and Thessalonica. The church was in the body of Christ, a mystery for which ages past were depth hidden in God. That's in Ephesians. And when you study the Old Testament, you will see Jesus and different mysteries that was to be revealed. And when Christ came, he revealed many of those mysteries. The church had a unique place in the counsels and purposes of God. And he had written a letter to both forward to him. This is mentioned in 1 Corinthians 5, 9, and 11. That letter is lost. Okay. Here's a temple at Octavia. That was a sister of Augustus who was seated on a throne inside the temple, was a symbol of the Julian family. The temple was enclosed with Corinthian temple columns and built on a podium surrounded by stoias or steps. And that represents the imperial cult of Rome, which was spread through the empire. The Roman Empire was massive gulf. If you see this is it finished off now. And there's actually a 4-mile canal there. Isn't that a pretty sight of Cornith? The area of study will be this area of the Gulf. It is his second missionary journey. Paul had a vision at Taurus. He heard a man call him, cross over to the Macedonia and help us. That's in Acts 16:19. He ministered there for 18 months. Achaia was was originally the name for a relative small amount of territory in the south of Greece. So when he heard this message in his vision, there was a change of plans. So he ministered there for 18 months. It's north of that place, wherever that is. It was governors were. Oh, by the way, governors were procurators. Major cities of Achaia was Cornith, Athens, and Sparta. So it was an area. Paul traveled from Philippi to Thessalonica, to Berea, to Athens, and ultimately to Cornith. This area of Greece was full of Roman activity. Now, this is the infamous. That's where they have built now a canal to go for ships to go through. All right. It was located on a narrow 4-mile stretch of isthmus that became a bridge for goods being transported from one end of the Mediterranean Sea to the other. From these ports, they would bring their ships, unload the products, which they would put on smaller ships, and they would roll them across a rack type thing to take them to the other side of the water. This was done to avoid going around the bottom of the Peloponnesus, which would be an extra 200 to 255 miles. That infamous means neck. It was coming from or to the Gulf of Cornith into the Saronic Gulf that flowered. Now, the passage has been completed in 1893, a 4-mile. Today, the population is around 30,000, and there it is today. So this is what it was like, and then they've built the canal there. The roads built, this is an inscription. Erastus inscription that was found in 1929. This Lechian Road, this main road ran from the city of the northern part of Lecania. Well, that's its name. The road was about 40 feet wide and included sidewalks and drainage channels. Steps along the road indicated the passage was not intended for wheeled vehicles. Isn't that interesting? It was marble. Um, you could smell the ocean from it. It leads from Cornith to Ogoria. There's a inscription that was found in 1929, Office of the Aedeles. Paul mentions these different people, so this kind of verifies that there was a city treasurer. There was a man named Irachias mentioned in 2 Timothy and Acts. And there was also a guy in the 70 disciples named Irachias. Thus, the payment stone is a historical proof of verse 1 in the Bible of 1 Corinthians. This is in the way. Aphrodite was the goddess of love. A Cornith girl meant she was if you were called a Corinthian girl, it meant that you were a prostitute. Roman name is Venus, and made famous by the statue of Venus de Milo and other classical works of arts. Domestic bliss, let me see here what I have on that. Got a lot on the road that is just a lot more information than we need to know. Encourage her followers to abandon warlike practices in favor of domestic bliss. An ancient version of the mottos of the 1960s was "Make love, not war." The Cornith was a place of worship where Aphrodite's temple sat. In it were 1,000 priestesses. They practiced a religion by having sex as part of their religious practice. At night, they would come down from the Cornith and go to the marketplace and ply their wares. The city was known for its immorality and debauchery. When courtesans visited Cornith, they were recognized by their dress or their distinctive short hair or shaved hair, which could explain Paul's otherwise very confusing remarks of 1 Corinthians 11 through 2. 11, 2 through 16. And if I remember correctly, you will receive many gifts, wisdom, well, I don't know what, through 16. I was going to say that doesn't say anything. It's where he tells them that the women should cover their heads. This may be why. Okay, so they aren't known to be a courtesan. Okay. So who wrote this book? Well, Paul, the Apostle Paul, wrote this letter during the last year of his 3-year ministry at Ephesus. He was in Ephesus when he wrote to Cornith, probably a few weeks before Pentecost in the spring of AD 56. Now, Aquila and Priscilla, if you don't know who they are, you'll read a lot about them in Acts. Paul spent a lot of time with them, and they did go around with him. And he would leave them in Ephesus, where they were instructed by an eloquent man named Apollos. Apollos went to Cornith and had a ministry there. The Corinthians, Paul had written the first letter that's not available that included an abomination not to mix with sexual immoral. Otherwise, don't think you can go out and be friends with someone who's immoral. It doesn't generally work, and they will usually corrupt you instead of you helping them. That's God's job, y'all, right? Yeah. The writing in 1 Corinthians was prompted by an oral report that Cleo's household had about a fractional strife within the church. It was about an incestuous relationship, the Lord's Supper, and confusion over the resurrection. 1 Corinthians contributes greatly to our understanding of the Christian life, ministry, and relationships by showing us how the members of the church, Christ's body, are to function together. And this still applies today. Y'all, if we did it as Paul suggests, the world would look a lot different. Problems can arise in any church because the church is comprised of sinful people. Redeemed, certainly, but still prone to follow the tug of sin. We are all living that, aren't we? Paul gave specific solutions to specific problems about the underlying answer to all these problems is for the church and its members to live Christ-centered lives. It all comes down to living under the lordship and authority of Christ, the head of his body, the church. These are the two commentaries that I will be using. And by the way, there is loads and loads more information that I have. I love Charles Swindoll. His commentary is insightful. It's current. Expositors gives you more information, gets more into the Greek meanings or the Hebrew meanings and stuff like that. So that's just an introduction, y'all, to Corinthians. We will cover, of course, a lot as we go into 1st and 2nd Corinthians. I have taught, led 1st Corinthians before in 2014, I believe. But I did not lead 2nd Corinthians because they didn't have it written yet. So I thought, well, it's a good time. And this is a good one for me to end on because it reminds me of what we're to do in the church. I'm being called to do more work in the church and to spend time with my lovely husband, who was a gift from God. So we will meet every Friday morning from April 4th to June 20th. It will be from 9 to 11 Central Time, y'all. So sorry, California people, you're going to have to get that coffee percolating early, all right? 9 to 10, we'll discuss the homework or whatever comes up, and then 10 to 11 will be the DVD. I am no, 1st Corinthians, I still have the DVD. 2nd Corinthians, I will be streaming because I decided to do it that way. Each week, you will receive an email from me with a link to listen to the discussion via YouTube. That's after the discussion. My channel is at Denise Matthews 6059, or there's the YouTube thing. The second link you'll get will be a recording of Kay Arthur's lesson that will be available only for a week. You cannot download it or anything for copyright purposes. This is my husband and I when we went to Israel, and that is the menorah that they have. You can reach me, just don't call me at night because I am tired by the end of the day. So that's just a short introduction. Do your homework. April 4th, we will start with lesson 1, okay? This is a 12-week study, and it is long, and it is difficult, but it is so very, very rich. In my email, I'll also have a link. I do ask if you would donate $5 per class. That helps me cover expenses for Zoom, PowerPoint, and all the other stuff I have to purchase. It's getting more and more expensive. Oh, imagine that. It's getting expensive. So anyway, welcome to the group. I look forward to meeting you, and I will see you next week as we study 1 Corinthians. Thank you. Love y'all. Bye-bye.